Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. EnergyWeb video for you guys today. EWT on the exchange. This is a project we have covered for some time. Certainly one of my favorite ones when it's in relation to the energy sector, as you've probably seen or heard in many of the previous videos that we've done with this substantial market value not only the existing energy sector has at its disposal, but also the future to come, especially with new energy outlets. We've talked recently about hydrogen and, of course, the continuous development of renewable energy, and always the topic of increased pricing hikes with our energy bills and things like this makes it even more of an interesting topic to discuss as to how perhaps we can either avoid these bills in the future, have a more structured system, more transparent system, allowing us even to become prosumers rather than consumers. So there's a whole real accolade of information and certainly technological advancements with the utilization of artificial intelligence and blockchain, IoT, all of these merging technologies coming together to help us move in this hopeful right direction. So we're going to be talking a bit about Germany. Actually, it's in the last few days been a bit of an announcement out of the collaboration with EnergyWeb and also the DENA initiative, which we'll go into a bit more detail in a second. So let's go straight into it and talk about this in a bit more detail. Before we do, don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and make sure, of course, you hit the like button as well so we can get to bigger audiences. And of course, don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel, loads of interviews, discussions, topics, you name it. Trying to get into a bit more of a swing in more videos going out and trying to keep them a bit shorter as well. So I won't keep you too long with this one. Top level stuff, hopefully, for you guys. Let's go into it. So this is basically relating to this. Okay, so this is the article in particular, Smart Energy International. This is what we're going to be talking about. So this is DENA or DENA. I'm not sure how it's actually pronounced as the abbreviation, but this is the Deutsche Energy Agenda. It's pretty much a massive initiative around the encouragement of and development of projects within the energy sector. Of course, most conversations always around renewables. We've of course talked about things like hydrogen, fusion power on the cusp of entering the real world properly soon as well in a mass aspect. And all of these things have also started leading to how we can integrate, as I said earlier, blockchain, AI, all these merging technologies coming together to operate a new system, a new way of traceability, processing, validating energy, the way we share or spread energy carbon credits around. And we've done a numerous amount of videos on kind of like the background of how it really works with carbon credits, the trading systems, in particular peer-to-peer trading energy aspects as well, because this is where you and I, for example, could have any excess energy or energy that we've produced from solar panels or wind or whatever that we can actually put back into the system and actually share it with each other. And this will become very apparent when we talk about things like community hubs. So a community or a district or a council would have its own sort of big battery capacity systems, and anything in that 1 mile, however many miles radius, can put energy into that, and it can be shared simultaneously to others that need it. Of course, you have to pay for it, and equally you can sell the excess energy so that you're not just paying for these standard rates or these whole rate prices. You can actually share these with others. So I'll try and find which one's best to put at the end of this video for sure if you want a bit more detail on that. But there's always demand still for extra content around this area for a bit more understanding, so we'll definitely do that if you guys want that. But looping it back around, so the German Energy Agency, DENA, is leading the DIVE project to leverage digital identities to integrate and manage renewable energies in a decentralized landscape. So, of course, there's a big factor of blockchain coming into here for sure. When we talk about decentralization opportunities, the ability to essentially secure data and information on blockchain, to not have it manipulated or any fraudulent activity. It's very much real time in the sense that we can start perhaps building algorithms and data based on future trend or future usage on these kind of data points. And with the identity side of things, this actually helps confirm kind of the legitimacy, the verification process of anything related to it. So whether that's a person or a broker in between adjusting prices or organizing prices of energy, it could be a machine, or what kind of mean by machine is like an appliance, like a smart meter or something like this, where we've got confirmed logistical information about what's being used, how and when it's being used, why or what it's being used for. And then ultimately this paints a pretty picture of your usage as an individual. It can also picture what's being used from a corporate level, an institutional level, and then ultimately all the way around towards the actual national grids, the network grids of energy as well. And what's been kind of happening on numerous occasions over the years, or many, many years, is this kind of misjustification of pricing. We see our energy hikes up, we're going, well, hang on a minute, there's more renewable energy sources and infrastructure than ever before. And in some cases, like myself, I use Eon Energy here in the UK, and they boast 100% renewable energy. And you're sitting there, well, okay, I get that you have to pay for the infrastructure, I get that you have to pay for the transportation, for a better word, of that energy coming from the grid to yourself and vice versa, but still the bill's going higher. And there's obviously many variables on top of that, in terms of scarcity of natural gases or these energy carbon credits, depending on the usage of people. There's obviously economic factors and loads of other things, but it still doesn't really make any sense within our minds when we look at it in finer detail. So one advantage of blockchain is obviously opening up that transparency perspective to say, hang on a minute, we're being overpriced here. Or in fact, even from the root cause, to identify things at the very root cause, and then make sure that from AI data, from trend setting, forecasting in that real time manner, we can avoid the stipulations of speculative pricing, bills, guesswork, intermediaries in particular, which cost a lot of money. In this instance, you would have a national grid, and then you would have several suppliers, and in between that you would sometimes have brokers that buy and sell the carbon credits, hence the definition of the standard rates and the wholesale rates that we have on our bills. And in general, when you always hear like Ofgem or these initiatives or organizations around the world who are supposedly supposed to protect us, they always talk about these price influxes or defluxes of movement in price. So ultimately, it always comes down to us as the users, the end users, to have to pay for all this nonsense most of the time. And even things like maintenance, where in most instances, some of the infrastructure around the world is very poor, even from electricity perspectives, but we always have to front the bill on that, when actually we shouldn't be. So there's all these things that we don't know about specifically that we could now potentially find out in a lot more detail. So we talk about the identity aspect. So this is very much what it's talking about here. These can be acted as a trust anchor. So this is in relation to digital identities, i.e. verifying the existence and capabilities of each system in real time. Exactly what we just said a minute ago, to be able to oversee all of this in one hit. So by automating those verification processes, the electricity use cases that the devices are participating in can be changed quickly and easily to ensure grid stability and cost savings for energy customers or consumers. So this is the exact point there. Now, as I've said before, there is an alternative very much on our doorstep for us to become prosumers, avoiding this consumer mentality and actually being able to produce things ourselves. This doesn't mean that you could go and sell, I've got loads of excess energy, I'm going to sell it on the market for a load of money and make loads of profit, because you're just going to be as bad as the companies that do this already. It would be in a fair system, but you would still get paid for it, of course, based on the real-time rates, the real-time information that's going out there. So when we talk about EnergyWeb's introduction here, we of course know with the foundation, especially with the WebEx chain that they've developed, EnergyWeb reports to play a central role in this DIVE project, including taking the lead in developing and implementing use cases relating to electricity labeling and verification, includes digital identities, and in conjunction with registry and exploring energy industry use cases and their links to identity register. It's all a little bit of a waffle, really, to be honest, in some of these sentences, but it all loops around ultimately to the fact that we're very conscious now, more so than ever before, about sustainability. which of course blockchain ticks that box in most cases, but sustainability from ourselves, because in the near future, guys, we will be penalized individually for our emissions, for our carbon footprints. And that could be in the format of central bank digital currencies. It could be in the format of our financial remits in general, that we could be blocked or even stopped from doing things or going certain places because of this kind of scoring. And this is very apparent in the sense that in an institutional level, this is already underway. And we look at the ESG narrative. And for those that haven't watched previous videos, when I started my marketing career 12 or so odd years ago, one of the key things that companies were really striving towards is updating their CSR or corporate social responsibility pages on their websites. And this is heavily involved around how environmentally friendly are we? Do we recycle? All this kind of stuff. And a lot of people would just go and get a certificate, pay a load of money for it, and just have it slapped on there to insinuate, yeah, we're doing what we can. And ultimately, what value does that actually hold? And a lot of companies either invest in companies or use companies based on these sustainable motives. And you will find a lot more retailers or online e-commerce think about this heavily, because there are higher tax in packaging, material items, of course, commodity aspects. Look at all the economics around this over the last couple of years. Many variables around that as well. But the point being is that certainly from setups of products or materials and things, there's a huge amount of work and effort now going into asking questions around materials, recyclability, the energy consumption of having these things made, and all of the things you can possibly think of. And it's quite a manual process at the moment, but this will become more automated for sure. But it loops back around to that point that actually there is a value to all of this. So when we talk about potential fraudulent activity or potentially using a service or a supplier that may be insinuating that they are economically friendly or environmentally friendly, it may not be true. So we see this whole like greenwashing narrative going around at the moment. And the prime example that we covered in the recent Power Ledger video was the aspect around Deutsche Bank. Ironically, we're talking about Germany here, but Deutsche Bank were fined millions for putting incorrect data relating to ESG goals or targets within their websites and their public material. And this was frowned upon significantly. And you will see a lot more about this. So when I talk about as an individual aspect being potentially penalized for not accommodating towards these things, that's what I meant by it, is the fact that they have started the trialing through the corporate systems, and this will filter down to us as users. And ultimately, arguably, corporations and companies, like with everything else that we do, will ultimately start fitting the bill to the users or the end users. Mark my words. See it happen over these next few years, trust me. So have a look through all that for sure in your own research. But taking it back to this, we need to make sure to ensure that we accommodate ourselves towards these new narratives, these new initiatives, that everything in the background, this isn't in our hands, most of this, to be honest, unless you are a prosumer and you think about this logistically yourselves. We're at the moment, as we have been for many years, relying on systems, grids, companies, etc. We are now relying on them to put these systems in place, so we have a fairer system, a more transparent system, and ultimately a more economical system as well, so that we can avoid these potential penalizations for the things that we just spoke about. So all of these things need to come into play. When we look at the digital identity aspects, it's quite interesting when it comes to blockchain. So obviously in digital identity aspects of the energy sector, using things like blockchains, the smart contract abilities definitely have for sure numerous benefits within the whole energy sector and for ourselves as well as individuals. So we talked about a bit about transparency. We talked about the aspect of validation processing. You can go way into detail about like the efficiency of this. When I talk about real-time data, this can save a lot of money, and it can, not just for us as users, but the whole grids, everything. And it can become more sustainable as well, in the sense that things can be done on measured format of data that's in front of us. Hopefully you're still with me on this. I mean, it is a complicated topic. I'm trying to do my best to break it down. But in terms of these digital identities, we mentioned a few things about machines and these kind of stuff. This can also be applied to things like the actual solar panels themselves, the turbines that are used for wind, as an example, and even the patterns can be as an identifiable format, as well as billing, data, all the ownership factors really of energy assets in general. And then obviously from blockchain side of things, we can validate, we can process this information. It can essentially be tamper proof. And then of course with smart contracts, this is where we get a bit of the integration of interoperability. So this pulls together the opportunity that this country might use this grid, this country might use this grid, they might use these various different companies. But of course with API integration and smart contract ability, we can remove any of the barriers or the stipulations that might be a barrier from that equation, which is really interesting for sure. And especially as the fact that most smart contracts are essentially self-executing as well. This means that within the coding in the background, this can be very much heavily pushed forwards to make this a hell of a lot more efficient and a lot more speedier. So when you're executing, or brokers or grids are executing these contracts or transactions of carbon credits, we know that the smart contract can not only automate that process, make it faster, but also integrate with the fact of blockchain, essentially with the data, the information, the quantity, the price, all these factors that manipulate the price point that we get in our energy bills or usage. So there's all of these aspects within blockchain ability, and that's what EnergyWeb is essentially providing in certainly in this aspect of the digital identity and the trust mechanism of utilizing blockchain in the energy sector. And one last thing to really think about, which we've talked about in the past, is the RECs. So this is the renewable energy certificates. We talked about this in fine detail. We looped back about what happened with Deutsche Bank. There's so many other use cases or case studies around this topic. And as I said, we covered these in previous videos, but this enhances companies, it enhances us as individuals to prove that we are buying or selling energy in a correct way. And also this is definitively what we are and are not using. It's not guesswork. It's not done by meterings. It's just done on algorithm AI, strict real-time data. So we can avoid any discrepancies whatsoever. And the trustworthiness is absolutely critical for the ESG reporting side of things. And I've already talked about the value of ESG. There's massive targets for countries, targets, as well as company targets, and probably individual ones coming soon. By 2030, by 2050, you see all these crazy meetups that governments and parliamentary officials come and do every year. It feels like we don't have any progress whatsoever. They just move the numbers around to accommodate their narratives. But this is where it is. This is where money is flowing into right now. And they've given essentially a further reasoning as to why this is such an important factor. I mentioned as well about AI integration. This is hugely important for the real-time data side of things. But essentially, these predictive models are essential for the progress of all of this being able to work, in my opinion, along with blockchain, of course, fostering that collectively. So there's all these areas, these points of transaction. The whole supply chain logistics is a huge part of this as well. The algorithms, us using it at the end, of course, as well. And it all loops back to these points here. So where it says here, we're talking about green proofs. This kind of eradicates the greenwashing theory, or hopefully tries to at least. But then you also talk about the inclusion of classification within the energy industry context, ensuring implementation, independent descriptions of inputs, outputs, conditions, and logic of smart contracts. It all pulls it together. So what's really interesting here, of course, is the topic of EnergyWeb. We talk about Power Ledger, we talk about a couple of other ones within the sector. The energy sector is huge, especially Germany's one as well, with the massive population that they have and the infrastructure they have. This is a big topic, and this is where a lot of money is flowing into, as I said a moment ago, into the energy sector, into infrastructure, into technological advancements, and certainly the implementation or integration of blockchain and other emerging technologies to help with this. And it's where it gets really exciting, because of course EnergyWeb as a foundation, utilizing that EWT token is very imperative. We've also got the EnergyWeb X chain, which the chain of which it's being used for or used on, really makes a great story really as to what's really occurring in the background. So when people say to me, in the comments, like, why, if this is so big and all these things are happening which everyone knows about, why is the price not moving? It's the pure fact that we're still in the very development stages of what's going on with ESG and what's going on with the energy sector when we're utilizing blockchain and all the other technologies. And quite simply, in my mind, I've always said kind of like 2025 onwards, we're going to see some huge steps of progress. And that includes, in my opinion, the price points of these asset classes, the utility tokens of these power or energy related projects within the energy sector and blockchain. Purely from the fact that we've got those targets towards 2030, infrastructure is continuously being built. I'm talking about turbines, solar, farming, whatever. Then we have the other developments, advancements of energy moving forward with all of these technological utilizations. And this is where I see the frame of progress in everything. So yes, we will absolutely see some progress of the EnergyWeb token in the charts, which we'll switch to right now as we move on to this topic. From previous history in 2021, the previous all-time high all the way up here in around $23, I believe. So it's still a good way to go from here, as we are right now recording at $2.22. We have had a bit of an uptake in the last few days, like we have seen across the rest of the market. But my point being is here, I do anticipate us to smash straight through that $20 because I do think the sector of which EWT sits in is a lot more advanced than it was back in 2021. It will always be that way because of progress, of course. I do insinuate that we would see between $70 and $100 in the next bull run. I truly think that we can hit those targets. So for me, I'm quite excited. I've been staking EWT. Obviously the pools are closed now and it's slightly adapted and changed since then for these worker nodes and staking through that way, which we'll do a separate video on because it's quite a unique topic and a bit more structured topic that we need to go through on that one. But my point here being that the future is very bright, not just for the energy sector, the way the narratives are going specifically, and these technologies will be moving forwards with this as well. So when, again, back to the point, why do people say to me, why is the price point so low if it's such a big thing? It's purely because in the real world, in the macro events and everything that's going on, it's not quite there yet. So you can definitely get some reactions for sure based on crypto market positioning, FOMO, the hype that goes on in these bull runs. You'll get EnergyWeb ramping up marketing like you will with every other asset. It's no different to that. But what you will see as well is you'll find certain projects fly up differently to others at maybe different times, purely as well around other variable factors. So you must consider that when you're investing and researching projects and not thinking too much about the chart. Yes, it's very exciting to see these upward trends for sure, but also understand where is this project sitting in the real world in terms of industry and sector. What is that sector and industry doing right now? What's it doing in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? That will give you a better defined picture, of where we see these price points going. That's why I think we'll get to the 70 or 100 this year or into next year when the bull run hopefully starts kicking off. Because we'll have the narrative of how amazing EnergyWeb is in general, and you'll have the sector and industry really ramping up the conversation, the narratives, the technological merging of these technologies as well. So it's really, really exciting future in my opinion, not just for EnergyWeb, but anything in the energy sector for sure. It's not really an industry talked about too much on the likes of YouTube and other areas. You really have to dig deep sometimes, but I only did it because I have a fascination for the energy sector. I wanted to know more about blockchain's integration in the energy field as well. And that concluded 2 or 3 really decent projects that we talk about quite a lot. We've done a couple of interviews. We've got EnergyWeb team coming on this channel very soon as well. And we'll be talking about all these different factors, not just from the EWT perspective, but also the EWX factors as well. And I think it will certainly open everyone's eyes as to, wow, this is absolutely huge opportunity here. So Just reflecting really quickly on the price point that we mentioned a minute ago. As I said, as a recording today, $2.20 roughly. We had up the uptake from around $2 a couple of days ago. I do anticipate us to be bouncing around here for some time. I don't think the market's in a full scaled upward trend movement right now. We may retest this 290 at some point, but I do anticipate us to try and hit back down at these $172 marks at some point. This is where I've got my buy orders in personally. Whether it comes back down to this previous low of 150, 160, I'm not sure, but I do have those target points on those fib levels at both one. I think I've got mine at like 187, and then I think this one I've got at like 174. I didn't quite like the idea of the 170 directly on the nose. I always try and go a bit above or below a certain fib level point. But if you're looking at EWT from new eyes, definitely just consider the history, of course, of everything. Research significantly what EWT or EnergyWeb is all about, the energy sector, as I mentioned a minute ago, and definitely do your risk assessments of any chart analysis that you possibly can when you're coming to invest. Because for me personally, at the moment, just from my personal instance here, RSI's on the bottom left here, showing around 54 on the 14, 49 on the 28 day. I'd like to see those come down a bit lower, and that's where I think maybe potentially the buy points again will come around those $2 or 180 marks as well. And that's where I've got all my limit orders on Qcoin, I think, for EWT. So let us know what you think about EnergyWeb in the comments below. Let us know what you think about the price movements, the opportunity that we might have in the future. Where do you think we will see the new all-time high in the next bull run? I'm really interested to know, and we'll reflect on some of those in the next update video. We're trying to do a live one hopefully this week at some point. We'll definitely cover EWT again. But guys, I'm going to wrap that up there. Hopefully trying to keep it as short as we can. But thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.